All right, so it's time I got to this ENTJ myth video that Rusted Typology did. Put my own 2 cents on it. I get to be like that little angel on his shoulder here, just hanging out. It's like me and Russ together. Let's play. Let's put some 2 cents in.
Going to be talking about the biggest myths about ENTJ. So as we all know, the MBTI community is absolutely fucked. No one has any clue what an ENTJ is. So this conqueror, commanding, forceful individual, who's pretty much as a smarter version of an ESTP, is simply an ESTP. So let's look at some of the biggest myths and debunk them. The most sensory intuitive type. Now, obviously you've heard this before, right? We all did. The most intuitive sensor, the most thinking. It's shit. They have SC tertiary, which by the way, our tertiary is shit. It's often tryhard, it's often childish, it's compensating. It's not good, okay? Your tertiary is not good. Forget about the ENTJs being sensorical gods. It's not the case at all. The reason why I think people have this weird misconception is because they don't know what TE dominance is. TE dominance just means you yell at people, you're aggressive, and you want results. So if you're forceful with what you want and very straight to the point, they think that's TE dominance. While TE dominance can, like for example, ENTJ can be very matter of fact. It's still different than just being a very forceful and straightforward individual. It's a rush.
Yeah, let's get on it. First off, MBTI sucks. Let's face it. Who cares? I really don't understand why. If you've encountered Socionics before, if you've seen the light, I don't know why the fuck you're messing around with MBTI. I don't get it. Uh, I don't get it. It's like showing you how to use a cannon, but you decide to put it away so you can go pick up a rock instead. Oh, fucking stupid. Anyway, still, yeah, TE in MBTI is often thought of as everything, creating external protocols, being very action oriented, being a doer who's productive and efficient, but also aggressive and commanding. Basically, in MBTI, TE is like a super element, super function that does almost anything. I mean, it's incredibly hyped up in MBTI, which is why one reason why MBTI is broken. Um, so he's right. The commanding, being in charge, domineering, no, that's not what T is. That's why really ENTJs and ESTJs really are not commanding and domineering. They don't want to be. That's not what they're trying to do at all. Now they sometimes get there because they can become CEOs or generals or presidents or just somebody who owns their own business. They're in charge of stuff, whatever. Um, so they get into a position of power, of leadership, but they don't actively seek it. They don't really care about it. They don't need the spotlight. They don't need to have everyone see that they're in charge. It doesn't really matter. Um, it's actually one of the differences between like an ESTP, SLE versus an ENTJ. Uh, ENTJs don't mind sharing the spotlight or just melding into the just being in the background. Some ENTJs don't even want to be in front of the camera or be the front man. They don't even want to be seen. They don't really care. Whereas ESTPs and SLEs usually they like being in the spotlight. They like playing with the crowd. They like talking to a lot of people and engaging with stuff. It tends to be more fun to them to do that. Some enjoy the power of it, being in charge, being the person who is clearly seen as being in charge. Others, it's not so much about that, but it's more about they just enjoy the fun. They enjoy the hype. Think of a Conor McGregor or Muhammad Ali or characters like that that just enjoy socializing, engaging with people a lot more. This is the valued FE kind of thing, whereas FE is unvalued in the ENTJs. Speaking of Conor McGregor, Mongolian mindset. I don't know what the fuck you guys are talking about. Making Conor McGregor an ENFP. That's wow. And Muhammad Ali ENFP. Wow, I don't know what the fuck is going on over there. Yeah, bingo. Anyway, uh, so yeah, it's one of the big myths. ENTJs don't really care as much about being commanding. Like,
Functions has more to do with optimization of their environment, streamlining the of efficiency, right? knowing how to it's management, knowing how to do things, how things work, and how to make things work better, faster, quicker. That's the way it works. It's a very pragmatic element. So it's always focused on pragmatism. Some of the traits that I see with TE dominance, very hardworking people, often focusing on excelling, developing, improving, understands facts, very fact oriented, very focused towards the objective data around them, very adaptable in that sense. So that's what TE dominance is. It has nothing to do with being a conqueror, it has nothing to do with yelling, being forceful or physical. Then we have second biggest myth, which is they're cold and uncaring psychopaths, right? Now, it is true that they neglect their FI and it takes time for FI to grow and develop. That doesn't really change the fact that they can be quite sentimental. They still value and understand and know it's important. Their relationships, their values, what really ticks their heart is something that they do put value on. This is important to them. They suck at it. But it doesn't change the fact that they would want to get better, that they are open to feedback. And many ENTJs do struggle with personal relations and it bothers them. So this is not a person who's just completely uncaring. No, they suck and it often bothers them. Another myth is that
Yeah, very true. Again, the ENTJs are and ESTJs. This works for both because they're both TE dominant, they're both FI suggestive. So both can really struggle with their personal relationships. And again, as you pointed out, it matters. ENTJs and ESTJs can often feel like they're spending a lot of time thinking about this, that this is an issue, a failing, and an area they wish they could improve on or would like to improve on. Now, some ENTJs and ESTJs actually can get pretty good at the dating game, the relationship stuff because of the TE. They're able to simply learn how to be more charming, sociable, dateable, whatever, all those kind of things. They can get better at it, literally train it up. Um, but they really actually care and they do care about trying to find the one, the significant relationship, thing that matters. Um, I think there's a certain amount of NI that's involved in there as well, where you're looking long term. Is this a relationship that's really going to work? Is it really going to last? Is it really meant to last? Uh, so kind of in the same way that ENTJs can approach everything in life, where they're a little bit more well thought out, long-term planning a little bit. Uh, is this going to work long term? They kind of have the same attitude. They ask the same question to a relationship. I've always done that. Always. I've always known with every girl I've ever met whether it's going to last for a while. Always. And in my mind, if a relationship looks like it wouldn't, it's just for fun and it might just be there for 2 weeks or some 3 weeks or something like that, that I just don't bother. Don't bother. It has to look like a relationship to me that has the real potential to being long-term significant. Otherwise, it's just like a waste of my time. I don't want to say it's a waste of my time because it's not like I'm worried about time or like I'm some pragmatic business person that's worried about their time. No, I just see it as not being that interesting anymore. Just it's like I just don't want to get involved. It's just why it's not really going to be significant. It loses its fun. Um, yeah, you can tell apart ESTPs with ENTJs or ESTJs. You can tell them apart, and this is one of them. ESTPs usually are not bothered by challenges in relationships and stuff. It's not as big a deal to them. Some will even admit to just being weird about relationships or having intimacy problems, and it's just weird to try to get close to people, especially if it's people who are not their romantic other. Even Rust himself talks about this a lot. He makes jokes all the time that why are people trying to get close to me and stuff like if we're not gonna fuck, then it's like why this just feels weird and so and so. They just you can get ESTPs that will talk about their divorces and fucked up relationships that they've had that didn't work out right, and they'll discuss that, but you just don't see the same level of vulnerability and concern about their relationships. And I think part of that's also that ESTPs can often feel like they're very social, they're outgoing, and they can just meet someone else. They'll find somebody else. They can, get through this disastrous relationship and move on to something else. It's not the end of the world to them. It's not that big a deal. Um, ENTJs and ESTJs may feel concerned that they'll never really quite find the right person, or that it's been a long time, or they feel uncomfortable if they're ever gonna get anywhere. So there's often a stereotype that's true where you encounter a lot of ENTJs that are kind of like the lifelong bachelor person. This could apply to male or female ENTJs. Probably worse. Um, but either way, that person who is like 45 and is just not had a significantly important relationship in a long time. Because of this, I would say that this is one of the big weak spots for ENTJs and ESTJs. And if you were a villain going after the significant other of an ENTJ or ESTJ, that's the weak spot. That's what you need to go for. You see this in the show Daredevil. I think Kingpin, Mr. Fisk, is an ENTJ, and his weak spot, where Daredevil finally gets him, is by leveraging Kingpin's wife, threatening the wife. That's the weak spot for Kingpin. That's what he couldn't go with. When something is really scarce to you, when something is very hard for you to come by, you're obviously going to be a lot more protective of it. For an ENTJ and an ESTJ, they might feel that way about their significant other. It's the one thing they can't just get any which way. They can't do that. So they have to protect it. ESTPs can also be very protective, but ESTPs just don't have this kind of level of vulnerability. It's just not something that usually is concerned with. So there's more nuances to get into, but I'm rambling long enough.
That they're very physically forceful and aggressive dictators. So that's a go-to to any dictator. Any perceived heartless dictator gets typed as an ENTJ. Dictators, I also wouldn't say. People really don't understand that ENTJs are one of the most individualistic types. Really, unbothered by collectivism. Instead, they have their passions and they have their projects, they have their vision or their passion that they want to pursue, and they pursue it with individualistic nature. That's what they do. It's not about appeasing people or doing what people want or focusing on the collectivistic. No, it's not about being a dictator of people. No, not at all. ENTJs are very focused on self actualization. And it can be anything, right? It can be prestige, can be success, can be, being very ambitious, but it can be mental too. Really doing something that has been done before or improving things. And it can be in any field. And physically dominant, now to that point, as I was saying, a C tertiary. Many of them are really not people who excel in physicality when they're growing up. When they're growing up in their teenage years, in their early 20s, they are not the dominant alpha male as you guys fucking imagine. You painted them as those fucking big daddy doms. They fucking ain't. They need time to work on it. And you often see many ENTJs struggle to act in the moment quickly when they're younger, right? Even Jason talked about. So they have a difficulty to really act in the moment and
Thanks for the plug. Thanks for the plug there. Yeah, true. Most of the dictatorship stuff, that's more of an SE Dom kind of a thing. So more of a ESFP or an ESTP is more likely doing something like that. Um, ENTJs really no. It's just not important. It's a means to an end. Again, as I mentioned before, ENTJs don't mind being out of sight, out of mind. They don't have to be up front and center all the time. They don't need everyone to acknowledge that they're the boss publicly. As long as people know who's in charge and it's understood and everything, they don't need to be front and center publicly. ESTPs usually enjoy that a lot more. Again, we can talk about different characters that we've seen before. Uh, Everybody thinks the lead in Peaky Blinders would be an ENTJ. I agree. Kingpin from Daredevil, ENTJ. Doctor Strange, ENTJ. I think they actually the lead in Pretty Woman is probably an ENTJ as well. A whole bunch of them. One of the things you see in common, they're all strong in their own way. They're all in charge in some form or another, but none of them really want to be front and center in public where everyone can see. It's not important to them. They'll just do that when they need to. It's not necessary. Usually SLEs and even SEEs will appreciate being seen publicly. I'm out there, I'm playing with everyone, everyone knows my name, everybody knows I'm in charge, everybody knows I'm awesome, whatever. It's more like Napoleon with the emperor. I am awesome. They like the power. They just enjoy the recognition. ENTJs, it's not as important. They're more interested looking for those intimate, important relationships.
They're more caught up in what ifs, like, oh, maybe this is gonna go to shit, maybe it's not gonna work, maybe how should I, maybe I should approach it this way, maybe it'll backfire.
INE.
They are kind of stuck in that thought process because of the NI auxiliary. No, ENTJs don't skip NI. That's not how this shit fucking works, okay? Stop coping. Over time, with maturity, they develop that side. They try to tap into it more. They work out, they're into fitness, they're into pushing themselves against obstacles, right? Staying present, challenging themselves. You see that
Benefit
growth and it's
cycle,
there,
benefit
but it takes
rings.
time. It's not something.
So for socionics, you see the benefit cycle, or every if you're in socionics, you should know this. If you don't, well, that's something we can talk about. Okay, the benefit rings. Uh, the ENTJ, as they develop more, they move more towards looking like an ESTP, SLE. And this is for those people who think that there's no development in socionics, like you're full of shit, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Yes, there is. Socionics has this in spades. Okay. You're moving more in the direction of SE. Okay? And you're going to end up looking a lot more like an ESTP as you develop because you're moving to SE. And you're already a thinking cold blooded kind of type anyway, kind of like an ESTP. So that's the direction you're going. This is part of the reason why ENTJs and ESTPs get confused for one another. Um, However, you never really become an ESTP. You never really fully look like you kind of a little show traits that look a bit ESTP like, and so for a little while you might get confused, but not completely. Um, you're never quite as in the moment and as take charge as ESTPs are. Never quite. Okay, ENTJs always still prefer to think things through a little bit, to have some kind of idea what they're doing, to hesitate and knowing, is this the right move? Am I doing the thing that is probably best to do? Whatever, right? NI is kind of a hesitation. NI is like a break. NI is a pause button for everybody. This is why the higher the NI, the more likely you see somebody reflecting, thinking, not acting. They're not in the moment, moving, doing shit. Okay? Because they want to first think it through, make sure that this is the right thing to do, and then we can begin to act. ENTJs have an eye ahead of the S. Um, so that's why they're never quite as active doing stuff, acting first, going for it. Okay? ESTPs are always better at that. Do it. Stop thinking about it. Don't overthink it. Just fucking do it. Get after it already. Let's go. Hit the ground and hit the ground hard. Let's go. There's a lot of situations where that is better. It's better to think that way. It's better to have that mentality, which is where ESTPs can thrive. ENTJs are not naturally that way. It takes time for them to do it. They got to grow into it, like you were saying. Over time, ENTJs grow and develop that SE. This is not universal for everyone. It depends a lot on the environment the ENTJ is in. who are they surrounded by, what's their job, what's their culture and career and all that. And depending on those factors, the ENTJ might really lean into SE a lot more and develop it a lot more and develop it faster. Uh, Others don't do that and they hang out in still with the more abstractions. They continue to do more NI, NE stuff, more nerdy NT-ish things. Think of the obvious, an ENTJ who goes into the arts or sciences, something like that. It doesn't have to develop as much SE. It doesn't have to grow that fast. An ENTJ who goes into the military, who plays in combat sports and things like that, has to develop the SE a lot more. So that person is going to start looking a lot more like an ESTP, right? Common sense, guys.
Very natural, that comes natural to this type. Another big myth is that they are this great conqueror, commander, and leader, entrepreneurs, right? Visionaries. The perfect example to me is someone like Steve Jobs, right? A visionary individual who was really good at understanding the potential of his products and how to really attract people to them. What really simple tricks to make things look a certain way to attract the most people to them to get the best result. He was perfect at that, streamlining the products to near perfection in that way. And also seeing what potential lays in those products and those opportunities that people didn't see. That's something an ENTJ is actually very great at. And this is not some warrior or leader of men commander on the field that will, go to war and command people. Not at all. Again, this type is not actually action oriented, right? They can seem like it at times because they cosplay, but they're first and foremost visionaries, people with great foresight, people with great rationality and logic to make great plans, to be methodical, to know how to tackle things with composure, with being controlled, making rational decisions. This is not a person who wants to fight every challenge or focus on, struggling in life and dominating people. This is complete no. This is you again talking about ESTPs. Complete.
Again, kind of circling on the same stuff, but Steve Jobs, sometimes that one gets disputed as to what his type is, but it could be an ENTJ. Uh, Having said that, one of the things that does work well, Steve Jobs was often described as kind of an asshole. He was a difficult person to work for. He can be very blunt, very just not a nice guy, just not. And this is kind of another difference that you might see like an ENTJ versus an ESTP. A lot of ENTJs can just seem very dry, not very warm, sometimes too serious. They're just not very playful a lot. Um, Especially when they're in the mode of action, they're really starting to do stuff. Can be a little too business to get to the point and so on, kind of people. And there's a lack of play there. Um, this is in part also because of the unvalued FE. They're just, hey, I'm trying to do, I'm trying to get shit done. I don't really care about how I'm coming across so well, and sometimes not doing well at that either. ESTPs can be better at this. SLEs can be better at this. A few other types can be better at this. At just being a bit more playful, having more fun, coming across in a more playful, fun way while still working, while still in action. ENTJs can struggle with this a bit. Um, there's a bit of depends, of course. What's the background of that particular ENTJ? So some can be a little more playful. I find that they're usually more playful and fun, especially around people they like, significant others, romantic situations, people like that that are more intimately important. Um, then ENTJs can be very playful and can look like an ENTP almost. But there's a lot of times they come across a little bit more just harsh. So think of all the characters I just mentioned. Doctor Strange is not nice. He is not warm at all. He comes across like a cold asshole um, constantly. Um, Other characters that I brought up before, the guy from Peaky Blinders, Kingpin, um, uh, guy from Woman. Um, love the Thomas Crown Affair. I think another guy like that. These are people that they can show you in spurts their vulnerability, their fun nature, and all that kind of stuff. Um, but they don't sustain it for very long. It's an advantage for SLEs. It can be more towards the crowd, more fun, more playful. As far as the commanding shit, yeah, ENTJs more often than not look like they're just more comfortable being this strategic commander than the guy charging head on. But they can do it. You can find actual living real people that are ENTJs and are brilliant commanders and so on. Nonetheless, they're harder to find. They're a little more unusual. Whereas you can find a lot of ESTPs that are that dashing cavalry commander who literally charges on the battlefield into enemy lines. You find a lot more ESTPs that do that.
Really ruining the fucking topic. Lastly, I would say probably would be that they control freaks. Now,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, this idea comes from mistyped ESTJs. There are ESTJs who self-type as ENTJs. Many websites type Gordon Ramsay as an ENTJ. Like, why? What's the really big rationale here between Gordon Ramsay being an ENTJ? Fucking nothing other than against stereotypes. That's how this shit works. This is the point of fucking MBTI. Jerk-offs are going around creating fucking stereotypes. So now we need to create new fucking stereotypes to counter back what the fuck was done. Perfectionistic streak, which does happen. They can be very focused on working very hard, perfecting their performance, excelling in what they do to a high degree, adhering to certain high level of standards. They can be demanding of themselves and self-perfecting, but they're not really focused on controlling you, controlling everyone. It's not about controlling or how things should be. It's not about that. This is not a person just who wants to circle jerk the idea of how things should be. They care more at the end of the day what the fuck works, okay? What brings the best result and how do we achieve it? That's my opinion. If you fucking disagree, comment down below.
Disagree, fuck you. All right. Yeah, he's right. ENTJs and ESTJs are not really, they're not Enneagram 1 types, really. They're not perfectionistic, micromanaging, it has to be this way. Not really. Um, they don't want to be. And I bet if you asked ENTJs and ESTJs, 9 out of 10 of them, if not all 10 of them, would be like, I'm not trying to micromanage anybody. I don't want to. And they're not likely to. Now, an ESTJ is a little more likely to micromanage or just get into your business, and they sometimes can't help it. They have high SE also. They just jump into action. So sometimes they kind of start doing your job for you. They don't mean to, but they don't. It's like they just can't help it. ENTJs even less, and don't want to. They don't care. ENTJs, they're a result type. They just care about the results. Does it work? I don't really give a shit how you get it done. It's not important what method or whatever is used. Not really. It just matters that you're doing something that works. It's getting the job done in an effective and efficient way, in a timely way. Um, so it's not important to micromanage at all. Um, yeah. Remember that ENTJs have very high use of NE as well. So coming up with different ideas, different creative approaches to stuff, or just being open-minded about doing it in different ways, ENTJ is cool with that. ENTJ is open-minded to you have your style and you have your own way of doing things. And as long as what you're doing is working and it's not interfering with other shit, it's like, go ahead. Hey, do it. Don't mind. It's a big deal. ENTJs are often very versatile that way. Um, they can roll with a lot of different methods or styles of doing stuff. Doesn't have to be this one way. So whatever, they can adjust to whatever works to get the job done and work with as many different kinds of people and different kinds of styles, different kinds of teams, whatever. And as long as at the end of the day we're getting shit done and it's working, that's it. The only time you're probably going to see an ENTJ losing their fucking mind is when shit doesn't work, uh, or uh, takes too long. It's another one. ENTJs can be very impatient. So another type that if shit is taking too long to get done, you're over analyzing stuff, or you're trying really hard to make sure that every piece of the plan and the step is perfect. Those are things that are going to drive an ENTJ crazy. Okay, remember that ENTJ sits somewhere between like an ESTP and an INTJ. Okay, they're a little more thought out, more cautious than the ESTP in their approach, but they're much more action, let's get shit done than an INTJ. And they're trying to move more towards being an ESTP. So if anything, you could say the ENTJ is trying to be faster and accelerate things more. Yeah. So let me see what else. Oh, the Gordon Ramsay thing. I think Jack made a case for Gordon Ramsay being ENTJ, and it's a good case. He kind of convinced me on that one. What was important in that case was once again tracking the development of that person, talking about how Gordon Ramsay again shows that he was not very SE. He was not this tough, screamy kind of guy when he was younger. He kind of developed that. He grew into that, especially as he became more of a competent badass in the chef world. Then he became a lot more assertive and aggressive that we all know of him now. So that's where a lot of the ENTJ stuff, well, at least that's one case for why he's could be an ENTJ. Again, ENTJ and ESTJ, both TE DOMs, there's a lot of both FI seeking. They're close, right? So it's not that big a deal. Um, yeah, overall, cool video, Rust, good stuff. Um, I'll probably talk about some of those other characters I described, and I would certainly like to get into more of the FI suggestive stuff, and I guess from my point of view, why ENTJs and ESTJs can be a very romantic type, actually. Granted, it's my bias, but um, and I'm sure I'll have to contrast with ESTPs more because I know my ESTPs want to know more about that. They want to hear about the subtle differences between ESTPs and ESTJs as well as ENTJs. I'll get into more of that shit later. But for now, there you go. All right. Toodles.